Coming in at number 25, Eleanor Roosevelt. And it's not how you start the season, it's how you finish. The Raiders proved just that. After getting off to a sloppy beginning of the season, they turned things around and were able to get to Comcast before losing to Patterson. Actually, they're losing too much in Prince of Core. And although I feel like the Raiders will be dominant in the PG4A, they won't return to Comcast next season. I'm going to go with worse, Mark. Coming right back at number 24 is a team that you probably never heard of, Middleburg High School. They got a pair of juniors in Nick Brown and Muhammad Ali Cox. These kids can really play, and they led their team to a 26-5 record. Mark, I think they'll be better. And the big reason why is because of Cox and Brown. If you haven't heard of these guys, they're solid Division I basketball players. They'll take Middleburg to higher heights next season. And actually, I think that they have the potential to actually flirt with the top 10 in the Capital Hoops rankings next year. Although Springbrook actually missed out on their first state championship in the last 4 years, they still managed to have a 23-3 record. Magruder took them down in the regional finals. Overall, great season again out of Springbrook. Worst, Mark, and simply because Magruder is still there in the division and they're just going to be so tough this year. They knocked off the Blue Devils twice last year, and I think that they'll continue that next season. If Springbrook has any chance of going back to Comcast, they'll have to get through Garland Owens, they'll have to get through J.J. Epps and those guys, Nick Griffin, and I just don't see that happening next year. Although it was sort of a down year for the Panthers, they still managed to go 19-7. They lost in the MIAA championship, a feat that they actually won the last 2 years before losing to John Carroll this year. Led by seniors R.J. Williams and Greg Lewis, the Panthers still cracked the Capital Hoops top 25 rankings. Same, Mark, and the reason why St. Francis has been so dominant over the last couple of years. The MIAA is actually similar to the WCAC out in Baltimore. It's a very competitive league. St. Francis will rebound next year. They'll have a similar record. The MIAA is a tough division similar to the WCAC out in Baltimore. But look for St. Francis to turn things around and contend for the MIAA championship, Mark. This was a Wise team that actually was one of the hottest teams in our area at one time. Wise actually was knocked off by Eleanor Roosevelt. Huge upset. Wise next season will be without leading scorer John Savoy, who averaged 14.8 points per game. However, they do return junior Joe Lundy and also Keith Shivers.
Gwynn Park finished their season at 17-9. Gwynn Park was led by their tandem of 1,000-point scorers in Brandon Ford and Tion Bards. For Gwynn Park, it's going to be a rebuilding process. Not only do they lose Tion Barnes, Brandon Ford, Daniel Henry, they lose their top 5 scorers this year. This was a very senior-laden team. This senior group had a lot of success. They never won a state chip, but they had a lot of success in PG County basketball. So I expect Gwynn Park to go into a rebuilding process.
Coming in at the Capital Hoops top 25 at number 19 is the Rough Riders of Theodore Roosevelt. Let me spell that for you. That's R-O-U-G-H. This is a team that actually made national headlines because their jerseys were misspelled. I can tell you one thing that wasn't misplaced was the effort that they gave this season. Led by senior swingman and Capital Hoops top 100 alumni Devin Gallman, the Rough Riders finished 25-6, winning the DCIAA before losing to DeMatha in the city title game. Mark, they're only returning one of their top 5 scorers, and he was a freshman. Jarrell Allen averaged 5.6 points per game. Theodore Roosevelt will not duplicate the type of season that they had last year.
Our 18th ranked team here at Capital Hoops is the Landon Bears of the IAC. Landon finished this year with a 19-6 record. Half of Landon's 6 losses this year came to arch rival Episcopal. It was clear from the beginning of the season to the end of the season that Landon was the second best team in the IAC. Landon was led by one of the best inside-outside tandems in the DC-Baltimore metropolitan area in junior guard Joe McDonald and senior forward and University of Virginia commit Darian Atkins. I think it's pretty fair to say that Landon is not going to be quite as good next year as they were this year. In addition to losing Atkins, Landon loses their only other inside presence in 6'6" senior Chris Hudnut. Now, Joe McDonald will be the man next year. Joe McDonald could be a first-team All-Met in our area. But unless they get a transfer or two, he's not going to have much around him to help out.
The Friendly Patriots took the 3A by storm last year, finishing 23-4. They actually won their last 22 of 23 games and made it all the way to the state semifinals. Mark, it's going to be very difficult for them to get back to Comcast next season. They're losing Sherrod Baltimore, Davon Morton, and Mike Johnson, three of their leading scorers. They do, however, return freshman Byron Hawkins. Look for Hawkins to be one of the best guards out of the 2014 class next season, but just not enough yet for Friendly to make a real push at things like they did this season.
The 16th ranked team this year for Capital Hoops Top 25 is McNamara, Bishop McNamara. McNamara finished this year with a 23-10 mark. They finished 11-7 in the ultra-competitive WCAC, one of the toughest conferences in the nation. It'll be quite a feat for them to get a 23-10 record after losing one of the best players in their school's history. In addition to losing Marcus Thornton, they lose their point guard, Ibn Muhammad, and they lose their top 3 scorers this year.
Cracking the top 25 at number 15, Potomac Falls. Anytime you go 30-1 and win the Virginia AA State Championship, you've done something right. And under senior guard Lucas Mihailovic, who's had a wonderful career, averaged 19 points per game this season, Potomac Falls did just that.
Magruder Colonels of Montgomery County, Magruder led by coach Dan Harwood, finished the year with a very impressive 22-4 record. Magruder's season will be remembered for 2 things. First was their win at Springbrook, breaking Springbrook's 59-game Montgomery County winning streak. And their season will also be known for knocking Springbrook out of the postseason, putting an end to Springbrook's reign as back-to-back-to-back Maryland 4A state champions. Tim, next year we're going to be expecting big things out of the Magruder Colonels. They return 3 starters to next year's squad, including their leading scorer, sophomore Nick Griffin, their point guard J.J. Epps, and their big man, the human highlight film, Garland Owen.
Oakland Mills finished 25-1 behind senior Greg Whittington, who's committed to Georgetown. They came up just short to Gwynn Park in the regional championship. Although next year they will be at the top of the Howard County Division, they still lose Whittington. They lose Peters. Keeley and Bethea will come back, but they won't be enough for Oakland Mills to make a serious push like they did this season. Oakland Mills will do well in Howard County, but that's about it.
The Digital Harbor Rams out of Baltimore City. Digital Harbor finished this year with a 16-7 record, including capturing the Maryland 2A state championship. Tim, it's tough to gauge whether Digital Harbor is going to be as good as they were this year, better than they were this year, or if they're going to dip a little bit next year. A lot of the uncertainty is due to the transfers. As I told you before, they transferred in an awful lot of players this year, and it's going to depend if players transfer out, if new guys transfer in. They only graduate 1 of their top 7 scorers this year. Next year, due to return, are the Mans brothers, Antonio and Naeem Mans, and their point guard, Daquan Cook. With that returning core, the Rams have a very good chance to get back to the Comcast Center in 2012.
Coming in at number 11, the Paul VI Panthers finished 21-11 under head coach Glenn Farello. The Panthers had a wonderful season, finished 3rd in the WCAC.
This year, Dunbar won their 13th state championship since 1993. And in that same span, since 1993, Dunbar has not made it to the state semifinals on only 2 occasions. As for next year, there's no other team in the state that has a better chance to win a state championship than the Dunbar Poets. Playing in the 1A gives them a big advantage, not having to play against some of the bigger schools in the state. And Dunbar is returning 3 of their top players from this year.
Milford Mill managed to win their 2nd straight Maryland State 3A championship. They finished with a 25-2 record and had the 3rd best year of any public in our region. Mark, losing Tevin Hanner and Isaiah McCray is huge. Milford Mill will not go back to Comcast for the first time next season. I look for them to be dominant and pile up some wins, but I just don't see the tools necessary to get back to make it.
Our number 8 ranked team this season is National Christian, led by Coach Trevor Brown. National Christian had a very impressive season this year, finishing with a 26-5 mark. As you guys know, they play a national schedule, and to accumulate a 26-5 record is very impressive. I expect National Christian to not be quite as good next year as they are this year. They're losing a ton of seniors this year, including their leader, Javon Moore. I expect them to be, they'll crack our rankings, but to be in the top 10 is going to be very tough. They're going to have to build around sophomore. Next year will be a junior, 6'8" Michael Kabani.
Head coach Steve Turner was just 1 win away from winning the WCAC championship, and had it not been for a high ankle sprain out of Chris Jenkins, they might have well done it. Gonzaga comes in as our number 7 best team in the DMV, finishing with an overall record 26-8. Gonzaga may lose Finner, but it's not the same Finner that we know from the AAU circuit anyway. Chris Jenkins and Nate Britt return next season. Anything's possible with those 2 on the court. Nate Britt is turning out to be one of the best point guards in the area, if not nationally in his class. And you can't forget about Charles Glover. Look for Gonzaga to have a similar record next season at 26-8, but they'll definitely be a better team.
Patterson had an amazing season this year. They were undefeated until they ventured up to New York City for the Big Apple tournament, where they took a 1-point loss to Cardozo High School. And entering the state playoffs, that was their only loss of the year. Went undefeated this year in Baltimore City play, one of the toughest divisions in the country. Tim, next year it's going to be tough for Patterson to repeat what they did this year. They're going to have a target on their back, and to go undefeated in Baltimore City play is awful hard. They lost 1 key contributor in senior Ricky Meekins, but I expect Patterson to reload. I definitely could smell a couple transfers coming their way. You know, the opportunity to go play with Akil Carr and play for a state championship doesn't cross your way every year. So I expect them to reload, and I expect them to have just as good a year and win a state championship in 2012.
It's off to head coach Jim Fitzpatrick on a wonderful season at Episcopal. He led his kids to a 25-3 record while winning an ISC championship. Better. Mark, there's no question about it. Episcopal will be a better team. They had a great season, but they returned their 2 leading scorers, both of their horses, in Keaton Savage and also Arnaud Adalamoto. Coming in at number 4, John Carroll. Head coach Tony Martin turned things around this season with a 33-4 overall record. They managed to win the MIAA championship over a tough St. Francis team, and they also play this Thursday at the ESPN National Tournament against Montrose Christian. Mark, losing their backcourt of Ronald Scott and Matt McMillan is going to hurt their production next season, no doubt about it. But they also returned Gerard Jones, one of the key pieces from this year's championship team. They have a core group of young guys, and I look for John Carroll to be the defending MIAA champions and act like it next season. DeMatha suffered a horrendous 50-point loss to St. Anthony's on national television midway through the season, only to bounce back to win the WCAC championship, the DC City title game, and the Alhambra tournament. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. DeMatha Stags, the number 3 rated team in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. Better, without a doubt, Mark. Obviously, DeMatha loses Mikael Hopkins. He's been a key piece over the last couple of years. Mikael won his third WCAC championship this season. However, they return B.J. Anya. They bring back Jarius Lyles. They bring back James Robinson, Jeremy Grant, Kelvin Howard. They have a core group of guys that return next season that will help them win their fourth WCAC championship again next season, Mark. Look for DeMatha to be an even better team than they were this year.
North Point this year finished the season the unthinkable 27-0, the only undefeated team, public school in the state of Maryland. Tim, I don't think it's even possible for North Point to improve next season. If you finish 27-0, the only way you can improve is if they play a national schedule next year. And we know that North Point High School is not playing a national schedule next year. So will they improve? No. Will they be just as good? It'll be tough because they'll have a target on their back and it'll be everyone's toughest game of the season. But returning three key starters, point guard Marquise Wright and forwards Edward Mouton and Naeem Muhammad, bringing 3 starters back to that squad along with the experience that they gained this year, should get them another trip to the Comcast Center, and they should be right back in the thick of things in the 4A next year.
Early in the year, I went on record to say that DeMatha was the best team in the area. Since then, Montrose Christian has definitely proved me wrong. At 22-1 and no starter over 6'6", this is definitely the best coaching job that I've seen out of Stu Vetter. And yeah, their schedule was cupcake early, but they played a very vigorous national schedule that included wins over Oak Hill, Arlington Country Day, Findlay Prep, and St. Benedict's. Montrose is still in the ESPN National Tournament again this year, and they're rated as the #1 seed. It's incredible what the Mustangs were able to accomplish this season. Montrose comes in as the CapitalHoops.com top 25. Mark, although Montrose is returning 2 horses in Justin Anderson and Michael Carrera, they're losing their backcourt, and we know high school basketball is a game of guards. Tyrone Johnson and Tyler Hubbard are going to graduate, and even with a few key transfers that Montrose will probably bring in next season, I don't think that the Mustangs can have quite the season that they had this year. It's been a phenomenal one.
For you, Lord, I live for you. Lord, I live for you. I give you more than I can.